Hey guys, welcome back to another video. My name's Bryce with Life Being Free Ministries. I'm currently in Auckland, New Zealand. As you can see behind me, you might be able to just make out the Sky Tower. So yeah, I want to talk about psychedelics in this video. And I've titled this video, Psychedelics Are Not From God. So firstly, I want to share my experience, and then I want to share a story that I heard from a pastor, what happened to his kid. And then I want to share a story that I heard actually from a friend who isn't a Christian, but just so we can get a scope that it's not just my experience, but there's other experiences that kind of align together, right? So firstly, I'll start with my experience. If you haven't seen my testimony, I'll put it in the link here. I talk about it, how I routinely did psychedelic drugs. I did acid and shrooms and all sorts of things, trying to find myself, find a higher enlightenment, or whatever you call that. So it was kind of tied in with the New Age, right? But the last time I took psychedelics was acid, and funnily enough, I was planning this weekend trip where I was going to do an acid trip for the first time by myself. Previously, I always did it with a group of friends. You know, like a bunch of us, 3 or 4, would all get together and kind of do it in a safe environment. But this was the first time I was going to go out and do it by myself. So I really wanted to do it in nature and where there wasn't many people. So I ended up staying at my stepdad's bach, which was in near kind of like a beach cottage place. And funnily enough, around that same time, that's around the same time as when I actually met someone who brought me into the church later on. But it was just interesting how at that same time I was also doing this acid trip. So you can kind of see the spiritual conflict war going on, right? Anyways, the day before, I managed to get some Christian material, whatever. But the next day I did this acid trip, and immediately when it kicked in, I knew that this was going to be the strongest trip I ever had. It was definitely one of the strongest acid trips I ever had, for sure. And it didn't start off great, I'll be honest. So what happened was there was like amazing lookouts across the beach. That what happened was I dropped the tab and I started walking up this lookout because I wanted it to hit when I was up the top. And I always mixed smoking weed when I was doing the acid, right? So I smoked some weed and I walked up, and I took my bong with me, and and I hid my bong in like a little, like, because it's a water bong, I had to leave the water in it for it to work, and I hid it in a spot. I was like, okay, it's going to be safe here, and I'll continue climbing up. So I climbed up, looked at the spot, and acid kicked in, and I was like, oh, this is cool, this is trippy. And these 2 German backpackers kind of they walked around the back area, and I saw them coming up, and I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to speak to someone when I'm like absolutely blitzed. Like I was absolutely like, I didn't even know if I could talk, I was that high. And they came up, and eventually, I started talking to them, and I was kind of tripping out, but they were like my age, and I was just like, I was like real like open with them. I was like, hey guys, just letting you know I'm actually just like really high right now. So if I'm not making sense, just let me know. And they're like, yeah, cool. And yeah, they told me they were traveling in a van, and oh yeah, I'll catch up with them later, kind of like friendly vibes. And funnily enough, this reminded me, I never thought that, because you always hear those stories where people think they can fly on acid and they end up jumping off buildings and like killing themselves. And I was like, oh, that story is crazy. That's crazy. But I actually had that at the top of this hill. I was looking down like this big drop, and I just had this thought where it was like, you can fly, you can just jump and you'll be fine. But I knew, even though I wasn't a Christian at the time, I knew that thought was not from me. And I was like, but it felt so real, like, because you're so like in this spiritual, supernatural frequency, you feel like you're superhuman. It's really hard to explain. Anyways, I'm still here, so I didn't do it, obviously. So I ended up walking down the hill with these German backpackers, and when I was trying to find my bong, I lost it. I was like, where, the wind must have blown it away, or there was a certain cone piece that I really needed for the bong. I didn't have any replacement of it or whatever. And it was my favorite bong. And I was like, it just put me on a mental spiral, like crazy. I was freaking out, where is it? I was going through all the dirt and the rocks trying to find this little cone piece. And I was freaking out, and I don't know what these German backpackers thought, but they probably thought I was losing the plot. And eventually, I said, "Hey guys, you guys do your thing. I'm gonna go back to the house and regroup." And I was just so angry at myself. I was like, why did I leave it? Like, how did I lose it? Da, 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 da. I was just like real down buzz, eh? And I was trying to get myself out of this this mental negative spiral. I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to the beach and go walk on the beach. And for whatever reason, I honestly believe, whatever fallen angels or Satan was playing with me, because for whatever reason, I was literally so high I couldn't find anything. But I was trying to find my headphones because I was bringing a bag to the beach. I just couldn't find my headphones for whatever reason. And I'll never forget this. I literally was like walking up and down the house, like frantically, like lost my mind. It felt like it for eternity. And I just couldn't find my headphones. And I was like, what? I swear I put them here, like right next to the bed. Like, where are they? And yeah, I was actually like looking in I was looking like under the kitchen cabinets, like places I obviously did not leave it, but my mind was just absolutely just on, like, just, I don't know, I can't describe it. It was just overloading of thoughts, and I couldn't even like get my thoughts to calm down and just pack a bag to go to the beach. I was just so overwhelmed and so ridiculously high. But long story short, thankfully I calmed down and I eventually went to the beach, and after my trip I found my headphones, right? Classic. But I just wanted to share that story, how I've never had that experience before on previous trips. I've always been reasonably under control. Never had a panic attack like that before. And it always, I think that was just a sign that God kind of like removed his protection from me at that time and wanted me to have a bad trip to kind of second guess what I was taking. Because around that time, I thought psychedelics were great. They opened my eyes to a lot of spiritual things and how the world worked, and I was raving about it. Like some people I even was promoting, oh yeah, you should do an acid trip and blah blah blah, which was very irresponsible of me in hindsight. So that's my story, and that was my last ever time. It was probably about 6 months before I got baptized. Okay, second story, and I heard this about maybe not that long ago, maybe a couple of years ago. I went to this Christian camp, and this pastor was speaking, and he was just sharing his testimony how his son took acid. He never took any drugs before, like he didn't even smoke weed or barely drunk, and he just went straight into the hard stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I just knew this was going to be a crazy testimony. And essentially, he lost his mind in this trip, and he literally, that small experience I was experiencing, he was like that just permanently. And I really resonated and felt it, almost like put the fear of God in me, right? I was like, wow, like Satan's really going after the children of God, right? And using these drugs to open up this spiritual demonic realm. And he was explaining, just how he couldn't believe, like, his son was brought up in the church, and he should know better, right? And he was struggling with like not getting angry with him, and he had to go into like this psychiatric ward so he didn't like hurt himself, and like serious stuff, like really serious. But by the grace of God, he said eventually he recovered after a few years after that trip and was able to get back into society and get a job and things like that. But yeah, that really, really stuck in my mind and made me really realize how God, man, that could have been me easily. It's like I was playing Russian roulette with my life. And yeah, last story. So firstly, I'm not trying to tell people what they should or shouldn't do with their bodies, right? All I'm doing is just sharing my experiences and experiences I've heard from others. But it reminds me of the scripture, before I get into the last point, 1 Peter 5 verse 8. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walk about seeking who he may devour. So there's many scriptures that talk about how we need to be sober, we need to be clear-minded, otherwise we're going to be vulnerable to these attacks. So last point, last story. My friend, he's a friend of mine. We're not like super close. He lives in Australia. I don't see him much, but you know, like me, he's very much. I don't know about now, but he was very much into psychedelics, and he was telling the story of one of his last trips he did, that he kept getting in these you know, visions, hallucinations, what do you want to call them, of all these religious figures popping up. So like Buddha, Krishna, Allah, Jesus, like all appearing to him on this psychedelic trip. And he's not a Christian, by the way, guys. So we're just going back and forth. And yeah, I was explaining to him, like, I believe that's like, you know, Satan's using it as to deceive people and making them think that they're on the spiritual enlightenment path. But in reality, it's just Satan in disguise. And interesting enough, he actually does. He believes that. He believes that, yeah, like Satan is using these drugs to kind of make. He kind of thinks that believes that it's making them people worship idols, which I do believe is true, right? But he also thinks you know, because he comes from a Orthodox Christian background, which they do have idols of like paintings of Jesus in the church and things like that. So I thought that was very, very interesting that he shared that. So it's just something to be aware of. And I'm just trying not to trip over here. So you can see how if you play with these dangerous drugs, it gets you into trouble, lots of trouble. And so if you guys have had any experiences in the past with that kind of stuff, like God's pulled you out of that and brought you out of that kind of stuff, I'd really like to hear in the comments, share your testimony, because I think it's really important that people have come from that background, that we just warn others to not go down that track, because it can be extremely, extremely dangerous. And yeah, I do not encourage anyone to go down that at all. It's yeah, like I said before, you're literally playing Russian roulette with your life, like with your mental clarity, because who knows what could happen under the influence now. Like, I wouldn't even touch that stuff now. I just know it's just going to open up things that I just did not want to go through, you know. All right, guys, hope you guys enjoyed that video. Bit of a rant, bit of a sharing experiences. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, if you enjoyed it, if you want more of this kind of content. And please share it with someone who is potentially looking at doing psychedelic drugs or is currently still in that trap of doing psychedelic drugs. I think this will really resonate with them. And yeah, I just pray to God that will reach those kind of people. Thank you guys, and I will see you on the next video. Peace.